Today we're going to be talking about graphing quadratics, and we started the discussion a little bit today, but we're going to continue it with this video and then we'll have a class discussion next class. And so here's what I want you to do. Go ahead and graph these functions separately in your calculator. Take a look at what this looks like, what the graph looks like, and take a look at what this graph looks like and see if you can determine what way they open. Do they open up or do they open down? And then I just want you to kind of think about what changed from this equation to this equation and see if you can figure out why does one open one way and the other opens the other way. And like I said, we'll continue that discussion in class. Here's another thing that we want to start thinking about when we're talking about quadratics is something called the maximum or minimum, a lot of times referred to just as max or min for each function. So I'm going to do this first one with you, and I'm just going to look at this graph. If the calculator will cooperate with me and stay. So I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to go ahead and type in this equation. X squared plus 2x. You should be doing this along with me. Minus 1. And I'm going to go to the standard window, zoom 6. Because this parabola opens up, that means I'm going to have a minimum value. And so that's what I'm kind of looking for, is this minimum value right here. If I'm just kind of eyeballing it, it looks like it's going to be -1, -2, but just in case I'm going to double check. So under the calculate menu, second trace, we can see that there's this minimum function here. So I'm going to go use that function. It's asking for the left bound. I need to have that cursor to the left of that lowest point. And then I'm going to hit enter. Asks for the right bound. I'm going to go to the right of that lowest point and hit enter. And then it asks for a guess, so I'm just going to hit enter again. And so sometimes the calculator settings are just a little bit off, but it is in fact -1, -2. And so the minimum point is when x is -1 and y is -2. But if we're talking about minimum values, we would refer to it as the minimum value is -2 at x equals -1. So I'm just going to write that here. The minimum value is -2 at x equals -1. That's kind of the correct way to say that. So when we're talking about maximum or minimum values, we're talking about the y value. And so this is really what we're talking about right here, this -2. So now we're going to take a look at the next function. So I'm going to erase this one. I'm going to put the second one in. So I have -x squared plus 6x. I'm hoping you're doing this right along with me. Minus 4. And I'm just going to look at that graph. And this time, the graph is opening down. And so we're not going to have a minimum value. We're going to have a maximum. And it happens right at the vertex of this parabola. And so I'm going to use the other function, the maximum, because of that. So I'm going to go second trace, 4 for maximum. It asks for the left bound. It's already to the left of that, so I'm just going to hit enter. It asks for the right bound, so I'm going to arrow over until I get just to the right of that maximum point and hit enter. And then it asks for a guess. I'm just going to hit enter again. And so again, if we kind of eyeball this, we could kind of see that it lands at that point at 3, 5, but just to be sure, I would use that function. And so we're going to say this using the correct terminology again. It would be the maximum value is 5 at x equals 3. The maximum value is 5 at x equals 3. Okay, so that's the correct way of saying that. Here's one last one for you to try, and we'll certainly continue this discussion next class.